Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of The Prosperous Empath. I am so excited to share this conversation with you today. This interview with Tiffany Mclain for me sums up why I started the podcast last year. After being in business for nearly a decade at this point, I noticed a common trend that time and time again, some of the most naturally talented, gifted entrepreneurs, extremely heart-centered, purpose-driven entrepreneurs that I've come across really struggle with their money mindset and charging competitive rates. And here's the thing, if we don't grow our money mindset, we will never achieve the success we desire. Instead, we'll always feel like we're missing something or we're not good enough to charge what we want to, let alone what we're worth. And the truth is, it's not just about making money. When we charge what we're worth, we value our time, our expertise, and the transformation we provide to our clients. It allows us to have a more significant impact on the world. So what do you say? Let's commit to expanding our money mindset, embracing the value we are bringing to the table. Let's be confident in promoting our services and charging competitive rates. It is time to step into our power and create the successful businesses that we have always dreamed of. And I'm thrilled to introduce you all to our guest today. Tiffany Mclain is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a clinical fee strategist for therapists in private practice. Her mantra is full fees are the new black. Via her program Lean In, Make Bank, she helps therapists ethically earn much more per month while seeing fewer clients by showing them how to think about and directly address fees in a clinically appropriate manner. And something I appreciate about Tiffany's work, and I shared this with her on the podcast, is that I also feel like I'm an ideal fit for her program. I think that she really speaks to service providers who are heart-centered. And what's really lovely about our conversation today, it's really a coach and a therapist talking about their own journeys in expanding and growing their money mindsets and deepening their wealth consciousness. I get super vulnerable in today's conversation, and honestly, I'm really grateful for Tiffany's questions and the opportunities to reflect, because I think that having an abundant money mindset, consistently being committed to growing my money mindset, has been a huge key to my success. It's a huge tenet of the Unbounded Mastermind. It's something that I support all my ambitious, empathic entrepreneur clients in overcoming, and it's something I deeply believe in. So today on the podcast, we dig deep. We talk about the impact of offering discounted rates and how they cause resentment, why coaches and therapists need their own coaches, therapists, and mentors, how each of us work on our own money mindset, how I've dealt with rejection and judgment when it comes to my own coaching rates. We talk about modeling your business policies as a heart-centered business owner, and also the advantage of posting your rates publicly and how to be clear on the impact of sales. It is a juicy, deep, heartwarming conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And if you're looking for more support, more conversations, more values-aligned, safe communities of like-minded empaths and sensitives, I really want to take a moment and invite you to join us for our May offering of the non-networking power hour with our Unbounded Mastermind community. And before we jump into today's episode, I just want to take a moment and say that if you're looking for more support, more opportunities to talk about money mindset and have some of these deep conversations within a values-aligned community of like-minded, ambitious empaths and sensitives, I wholeheartedly invite you to join us later this month for our May offering of the non-networking power hour with our Unbounded Mastermind community. It is completely free, it's pitch free, and honestly, it's the only long-standing mastermind I know of that allows visitors to have an intimate experience of what it's like to be a part of before even signing up, and make some amazing connections and collaboration opportunities all at the same time. Our May offering of the event is on Monday, May 22nd at 12 Eastern, and you can sign up over at unbounded-potential.com/podcast. And now on to today's episode. and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Tiffany, welcome to the podcast. I'm really delighted to be chatting with you today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't we kick it off with you sharing your pronouns and a little bit of your story?
Yeah, my pronouns are she, her. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work with therapists around fees in private practice and understanding how to charge based on what they need, which is extremely complicated in the therapist social worker world. And I'm certain it's very complicated in the coach world as well. So I love those money conversations with helpers who have been taught, I'm here to serve. I'm here to help others. And we have not been taught anything about understanding our own needs and our own desires and how those play into how we set our prices.
I'm not sure if I have shared this with you, but that was really the premise for my podcast, because working with so many heart-centered entrepreneurs, I think that there is this common struggle across the board for empathic entrepreneurs that we struggle with charging our worth. We struggle with charging competitive rates. And even more so if we're of a minority or if we're women identifying, we struggle. So I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast to chat more about this today. And I also just wanted to start our conversation by sharing how I originally met you. I don't think you know this. So Drew Rabideau, we have her in common. She's an alumni of my mastermind. I had her on the podcast recently. She's amazing. And she was sharing a learning that she had taken from you about why she doesn't charge discounted rates to minorities in her practice, or why she doesn't charge discounted rates to BIPOC clients. And I would love for you to share with my audience, with me as much as my listeners, why. Why do you not recommend that?
Well, before I say what I recommend, are you able to share what Drew took away? Did she talk about that on the podcast, or was it?
We were talking about why not to charge discounted rates to clients based on their who they were.
I got it. Okay. So one of the things that happens to me, I've been doing this work since 2017, and I have students who come back and they say, Tiffany, that one thing you said really blew my mind, and it's this. And I'm like, I don't have any idea. That sounds really smart. I don't know if that was really for me. But here's what I can say without more context of what specifically I was talking with Drew about in this moment. Very often, here's something that may happen in a therapy office. A therapist is sitting across from a new client or even on the phone with somebody, and they have a fantasy or an idea about who that person is and what they can afford based on their own prejudices or their own racism or internalized racism, all of our notions about who can and cannot afford our services. So often therapists will have a particular kind of client sitting across from them, maybe someone in the BIPOC community, LGBTQ, all kinds of stories. And they'll instantly offer a sliding scale. Oh, my fee is $150, but what can you afford? In a way, we're making assumptions about who that person is, how much they have, what they have access to, again, based on our own projections of that person. So that's the first part. And then the second part is we're also saying something about, we're making determinations about how they're willing to invest in their own change and their own growth what the value of their mental health is without ever even having a conversation with them about it. And we're also putting a cap on their potential. Oh, you come into my office, I'm going to offer you a sliding scale based on my own story, or even based on your own story, because I have no faith or belief that the work we do together is going to get you to a place where you could easily afford this $150 or $200 or $300 therapy fee. So it gets really convoluted when we start making assumptions about what the people across from us can and ought to pay. I don't know if that's what Drew was talking about, but that's one way we can get into that question.
Mm-hmm. I love so much of what you shared. It just, it really hits home the reminder that when we aren't checking our own biases, that we're putting a cap on other people's potential, their possibility, their dreams, and their affordability. And we're absolutely making judgments perceived on our own beliefs about what others can afford.
Yeah.
It makes me think, it brings to mind resentment and how the impact of offering discounted rates just breeds resentment. And I'm wondering how that occurs for you in your world and your teaching.
Yeah, I love
I'm seeing your smile.
Before we get into that, let me ask, because I imagine a lot of the people who listen to your show are coaches in the coaching space and probably a lot of therapists and social workers as well. What have you observed in the coaching realm around resentment when it comes to pricing?
Specifically working with empath entrepreneurs, there is such a common theme of giving, being of service, contributing, helping at the expense of helping ourselves. And I see this a lot with rates when we offer discounts or give more time or, extra calls, or we bonus this and that, right? Or we give gifts expecting other people will give referral gifts in return, right? It just shows up in those ways. And I don't think that a lot of empath entrepreneurs who haven't done their own work aren't necessarily aware. They don't have an experience in their bodies of that resentment and how it shows up. It might occur, as a complete blow up or a burnout. Those are just a couple of the ways that I see it show up. And been there, right? Been there, done
Yeah.
My journey too.
Yes, so perfect. Yeah, a lot of the therapists we work with, the social workers we work with, are also empaths, highly sensitive folks. But even if they're not, they still have this, for all kinds of reasons, the feeling that it is their duty and obligation to offer us reduced rates, sliding scales, take insurance, which reimburses so poorly. And on top of that, it's taboo. It's taboo in our field to have any negative feelings towards our clients. It shouldn't be. It depends on what orientation, but it's really been, we don't have a lot of discussion around anger, resentment, frustration we have towards our clients or patients. And we should, because in the real world, we're in relationship with our clients and patients. And it's our job as therapists to be thinking about going to clinical consultation, going to our own therapists, and understanding what these feelings are about, because then we can use them clinically. I imagine this thing is showing up in all kinds of this client's relationships. But if we, just like you mentioned, have not been doing our own work and we start to have feelings of resentment, we either know it and blame our clients. Oh, well, they came late to the session. They're not taking it seriously. Meanwhile, we're the ones who set the policies, set the frame, set the fees, but we get mad at them. Or like you said, we completely cut it off, dissociate it, which I would argue is even worse, because then it comes out unconsciously in things like, this client just doesn't value the work and I don't know what to do. It comes out as boredom. There's just nothing going on here. Maybe the treatment is done. Maybe they don't need therapy anymore. It often ends in early termination, which when the client actually still really needs help, but there's so much unconscious tension, resentment, confusing dynamics built up between the two that are not being spoken about. It's the therapist's job to understand and speak to these things. But if it's cut off or disavowed, they cannot. And so those things like resentment do inform the treatment. And unfortunately often reenact I get goosebumps when I think about this. The very relationship problem that our clients are coming in for gets reenacted in the therapy. And once again, it ends. And it can even end with smiles. Oh, thank you so much. This was such a great therapy. Yes, it was. But inside, something feels really terrible and nobody is acknowledging it or can even know it consciously.
Totally. Oh, I love that we're talking about this because I coach a lot of coaches. And, just like therapists have therapists, I always say that coaches need coaches. And one of the things I'm always mindful of, and I imagine we share this, is that, to the degree to which we do our own work is the degree to which we can reflect and sense and observe it in our clients. And I think the coaching relationship and perhaps the therapist relationship is often a model of who we be in relationship everywhere else in our lives. So, what you're saying makes me think of boundaries. And I work with so many clients whose clients show up late to calls or cancel at the last minute, don't honor policies, project, right? And something I'm just always appreciative of is that how our clients show up with us is a reflection of the work that there is to do in every other relationship in their life. And so if we're honoring our own resentment, having our own resentment in check, then we can actually point to the patterns that we're noticing and observing in our clients in a loving and compassionate and empowered way.
Absolutely right. That's absolutely.
Yay. I don't know. I feel really passionate about that because specifically working with empath entrepreneurs, we just have a default to take people personally. And so it actually requires a lot of your own work in order to separate yourself from other people's experience without embodying, taking personally, projecting our clients and the people we serve's experience. That's
right. I have a business friend who is not an empath. And I actually didn't know. This is just how I've always been. And I've been surrounded by empaths and people who are very highly attuned to the emotions of other people. Went into that world professionally. So this friend of mine recently, we were having a conversation and there was a situation where her boundaries were so clear. She basically rejected somebody's request for hanging out and becoming friends. Hey, let me get your cell phone number. My friend said, no, thanks. I'm sure you'll be able to make friends in the city. And I said to my friend, how did you do that? Weren't you worried about her feelings? What was it like? And my friend said, well, no, it was an inappropriate request. I didn't know her very well. So of course I'm not going to give her my phone number. And for me, even the idea that there are people out there who are not constantly attuned and picking up and responding to and noticing the little eyebrow and how it twitched in that moment, what it means, it's just a completely foreign idea. And so for therapists and coaches, I imagine when you're in the room with somebody, you're picking up all those things. It can't, without doing your own work, things can very quickly become murky and what's yours and what's mine. We can start making up stories. It's vital. I think one must professionally be in clinical consultation groups, peer consultation groups, whatever the equivalent of that in the coaching world is. We must, because we're constantly in human relationships. And if we're not working on our craft and ourselves as the tool, then we're doing our clients a disservice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that the same is true in the coaching space. I run a mastermind, and one of the core agreements in the mastermind is that what you can't be with in another speaks to what you haven't overcome in yourself. So when you notice a default to take someone else personally or to get offended by something that someone says, whether it's about their own experience or something to you, consider what about that is true for you. What's the work that there is for you to do around that topic? And I think that when we can provide those safe places for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to do their own learning, it can often just speed up the trajectory of that process.
You said something in I think it was your 2023 Word of the Year episode, which I really liked. You said, and I'm just going to butcher it, but here's my best attempt. Something about we must make room for, of course, our sadness and anger. The more space we have for those feelings, the more we are able to, on the other side, experience the joy that life has to offer. They go hand in hand. And so if we're cutting off or trying to cut off other people's anger or frustration or disappointment, sadness, trying to make it go away, we're tamping down parts of our own emotional lives. And we're not going to be able to experience joy fully if we can't also experience sadness fully, or our anger fully, or our fear fully. So it sounds like one of the things you really work on in your group is helping people become aware of how these feelings are showing up in them, and also the potential dynamics where we're trying to put them out of ourselves, put them into each other, disown them, play these, I want to say games, but it's actually deep unconscious relational traumas.
Yeah.
That if we're not constantly aware and consistently doing our own work, we're going to be playing these things out with family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, peers, our own clients.
Absolutely. And I think that is such a perfect segue to money mindset and scarcity, because I think that when we're trying to do our own work around money mindset and expanding our own wealth consciousness, when we see others charging competitive rates, when we see other people holding higher amounts of possibility and wealth and abundance in their own lives, it opens up what we believe is possible for us. So I would I'm just dying to talk about that. How do you work on money mindset with your students? And maybe this would even be a great segue for you to share a little bit more about how you work in the world.
Yes. I have an online program. It's a year long. It's called the Lean In Make Bank Academy. I run Facebook ads, and therapists they get so mad. They go wild at this idea of make bank, that I'm talking about making bank. And nobody's paying attention to the lean in part. And the lean in part is if we lean into our feelings of fear, greed, feeling, we're going to be greedy. We're going to betray our clients if we raise our fees. If we lean into these feelings, there's so much to be discovered about ourselves, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to, again, I'm a therapist and a psychoanalytic to boot. So that's really, we really deal in the unconscious a lot. Our unconscious relationships to our primary caregivers, all of those things get played out when it comes to how we relate to money. It's a beautiful canvas, money, that we project all of our own stuff onto. And so with our students, we have a 4-part process, but the first and most important part, you actually just spoke to it a moment ago when you talked about your mastermind, is setting our students up to understand how to engage with each other around these very heightened emotional topics, both their colleagues, but also the world around them. One of the first exercises we have students do, they don't know it. Hopefully they don't listen to this episode, but they have to go into some Facebook group as therapists or social workers and say, my goal for this year is to make X amount of money. And we want them to dream big. And they're just, many of them say, I'm going to back out now. And they do it, though. Somehow they go forward and keep doing the exercise and pay attention to the responses they get from others. Really, what I'm having them pay attention to is themselves. The stories, the feelings in their gut they have when they think, I'm going to go into this group of helpers and say, my goal for 2023 is to make $100,000 in my private practice and see fewer clients. It's the most terrifying thing. Mm-hmm. And when I don't even know if I guess I do talk about money mindset, but really it's back to our unconscious relationship with money and the way we project our own fears, insecurities, and trauma into our relating with other people. So one thing we'll notice is if a therapist puts out this big goal, they might have a whole bunch of likes. People say, go get it. Good for you. You got this. And then one commenter might say something like, oh, well, how are you going to make that happen? And the therapist, that's what they pay attention to. That's what they latch onto. Oh, I think they were challenging me, or they don't believe I can really do it. So I encourage them, pay attention to your own fantasies and projections about what these things mean. It's really not about the other person at all. It's about what happens inside of us. Mm-hmm. And then we take that work much later in the course into our own clinical work. When we're working with our clients and they're late, what are the stories we tell ourselves? What is that really about in us, before ever addressing anything with our clients? And then we just go down the rabbit hole from there again.
Mm. I love that example. I love everything you shared. I almost want to take your course. Do you have coaches in your course?
I keep having many people from different industries want to take it. And I say, because there's such a big clinical component where we're really doing a lot of case work. Uh-huh. I have, thus far I said no, but I think maybe a couple have snuck in there before actually.
Well, keep me posted. I always fall in love with my podcast guests, but the piece that I wanted to mention was the Facebook ads, which, by the way, I have been targeted for your Facebook ads. They're amazing. They're lovely. And I love that reminder of experiencing your own judgment or jealousy or feelings of, anger, frustration, opinions, right? We're strong opinions about other people's beliefs about money or, desires to make bank. And I think that is such a powerful learning, such a powerful flashlight back into ourselves of the work that there is for us to do. And, as a coach on the other side of that conversation, I charge high rates. I'm not a cheap coach. And I often will have clients come to me and then reflect back their, opinions about my rates. And I have to sit and be with that own discomfort in my body about being judged for my rates and how I position myself in the marketplace. And I'm so grateful for the work that I've done over the past decade that at this point in my journey, I don't take it personally and I can just speak to, I can normalize their experience, but also speak to the possibility of what's here for them. Sounds like there's some opportunities here for you given this reaction.
Wow. Can you, if you're willing to, I would love to have you share some of the response or pushback you've gotten to your rate. And back before you've done all your work, how did it feel inside of you when you had someone come up and pose a challenge like this?
Totally. I mean, again, I think that's why I started this podcast, because being so heart-centered, so empathic, I just have such strong feelings of empathy for the world and everyone in my life, right? I think that's why I always fall in love with my podcast guests and want to partake in their business and what they offer in the world, because I just believe in humanity so deeply. But I think at the beginning of my journey, there was just this part of me that cared so deeply, right? My business was driven by that care. I think for empath entrepreneurs, we so often go into business because of how much we care. And I just felt so selfish. That was kind of the embodied experience I had. I felt selfish that they couldn't afford me. I felt like I was being ungenerous, that who was I to deserve to charge this rate when, often the people I speak with to this day have sometimes decades more of experience than I do, often more degrees than I do. Mm-hmm. Therapists have PhDs that I don't have, so that was often how it felt at the beginning. And I'm not sure how I generated this breakthrough or what the journey looked like, but I would say that now how it occurs in my body is when someone will project their money stuff onto me. I feel that discomfort. I still feel the discomfort. Mm. I'll feel those I'll feel the upset in my body. And then I do this kind of internal process where I offer those parts of myself compassion and understanding and love. I remind myself that this isn't about me. And then I might just, I'm able to kind of take myself out of it. So remove myself from the conversation and allow myself to serve as that mirror for my clients, to really serve as that reflection of what they're saying. I don't know if that was clear.
It is clear. And I love both your description of the process and what it kind of your journey with it. And also this part you said around making room for your own feelings, recognizing them, having compassion for them, and then having them just right over here next to you. And then doing this thing you said right at the start, which was so beautiful, where you said something to the clients about, wow, this really speaks to the potential that if you and I work together, this could be something you could have too. And clearly there's a lot of, whatever you would say, a lot of something between where you are now and where you could be. I would love to go on this journey with you, right? You're not going to back down. You're offering them up a place that they could potentially step into by virtue of working with you. I think that's glorious.
Hitting pause on this episode for just a moment to tell you about my absolutely favorite way for you to experience a taste of our work with ambitious empath entrepreneurs in our Unbounded Mastermind, the community for empath entrepreneurs to celebrate and be carried forward by each other's successes, get bespoke coaching, and supported by a sisterhood of values-aligned business besties to finally step into your quantum next level. Each month, we host an intimate, non-networking power hour within our mastermind community for you to have a behind-the-scenes experience of what it's like to be supported in our community. Join us for our next event on Monday, the 22nd of May at 12 noon Eastern Time by jumping on over to the show notes for this episode and grabbing your spot at unbounded-potential.com/podcast. And I will say that being so empathic driven, looking at my business policies and how I can model and how I can form my business in a way that protects my inherent qualities. So what I mean by that is, for the majority of my career, I've just posted my rates on my website. They're just publicly available for clients. Everything is out in the open so that I don't have to negotiate with clients. I can remove myself more easily because the people who aren't for me can self-select out or they opt out. And I think that also really supported me in making in doing some of this work myself, is just really looking at, how can my business policies support how I want to operate as a business owner?
That I love it. One of the things I recommend students in our program do, though not all of them choose to, but I say post your rates online. There's so much energy that goes to therapists who they have the idea of, I'll hide my rates, they get on a phone call, and through the course of that phone call, the person will want to just work with me, and then they say their rates. And then the person may say great, but they may also, that may be way out of their budget. They may not want to. They may even want to use their insurance for a therapist who doesn't take it. And then the therapist ends up feeling bad and frustrated. The client ends up feeling bad and frustrated. And that was a whole, who knows how long, 20 or 30-minute conversation that might happen many times a month. That doesn't have to happen if we were willing to have the courage to say right out of the gate, here's what my fee is. If you're willing, if you want to work with me, here's the rate it's going to be at. And then let the rest of your website or how you're showing up in the world, your networking, be the way you draw in your ideal client. But none of this game about I'll sell you once you're on the phone. It's just too, maybe not for everyone, but it sounds like for you and it sounds like for me, that's not how I want to be spending my time. I want to start with the people who are excited to work with me at the rate that I charge.
Yeah. In my work in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of learning, a lot of personal reflection around internalized capitalism. And I think that there is this way of being conditioned in business that we think that we have to, we have to earn the sale. We have to compete for the sale. We have to win them over. We have to persuade them, right? We have to negotiate the deal. And for me, like all of that just feels like the tendrils of internalized capitalism. It feels like what is portrayed in a lot of media and what we learn about how business is supposed to be run. And something I really believe is that when we start to do some of that unconscious work about what we think is the right way, what we think we're supposed to do, then we can gain a lot more access to designing our business as the expression of us, the expression of our values about what we believe, how we want to show up and operate and express ourselves in business and in the world. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I'm thinking a lot about, I'm going to be totally upfront. I don't understand when people, often therapists will say capitalism. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm not that educated in terms of understanding how to think about the ways capitalism as a theory informs our work. But I do get what you're saying around, in my gut, I feel this idea of getting on a one-to-one call and like persuading or like, here's what I'm going to be it. And then here's the unveil, like all of that stuff feels so bad. So if that's what you're talking about with capitalism, yeah, it feels awful. This idea of I'm actually going to say two things that are probably competing thoughts. The idea of having to persuade someone to work with us and kind of go through that whole sales, the feeling of a smarmy sales process. I don't like it. It takes a lot of energy. And there's something on the other side in the time I've studied sales or tried to understand it, there is so much around a potential client or student, or even myself as a potential client or student, so many obstacles I have to change. For me, like to make a big investment or to do something that's going to really push me out of my comfort zone, it's so much easier to say no than yes, or I'll put it off, or I don't know. And so I don't like to do sales calls. We definitely have a sales funnel that goes through all of the objections people might have as they go emails, no, this, that. I am really torn about both making an offer and letting someone simply choose of their own accord in their time. And then the other side of really, I do a lot of copywriting, really making a case for someone to take this leap, even though it's terrifying and even though it's goes against whatever stories they have about themselves. So I think sales in that way feels so important. And I've heard from students who were not going to do it. And then finally they were like, okay, this email, I'm going to do it. And then they had this transformational moment. And so often I used to be so afraid of sales. And I think so much now, like if I wasn't willing to do this thing that was made me nervous and really make these passionate pleas, or really get to know my students well enough to say, here's why you're afraid. And here's what, or if you think you can't afford it, maybe you can. Here's a sign you can't. But if you could, here's what. If I don't do that, then I'm actually, it feels like I'm not fighting hard for them and letting their own internalized, all of the things we've been told as mental health clinicians, probably empath coaches too, about why we don't deserve to take up space in the world and invest and play bigger. I feel like my voice has to be as powerful on this side as that internal 30 years or 40 or 50 or 70 years of messaging has been on the other side. So it is a conflict in me sometimes to think about, man, I'm going to F and sell. I don't know if we can swear. I'm going to F and sell if it's going to allow this person to do something different and then have the change on the other side. So that's my long-winded response of like, I don't know. That's capitalism. I'm all for it, but I don't know exactly.
I mean, I think that's a beautiful answer. And a couple thoughts on what you said. So first of all, like, I think that you're really speaking to the possibility, the transformation that selling our products and services makes available for clients. And I think that, you're really clear on your impact. You spoke, when you were just talking about sales, you consistently were speaking through the lens of your students and your clinicians, how it is for them or how maybe they can't afford it. So I hear how you're really coming from that place of being of service and contributing, and you're clear on your angle. I think sometimes the gross approach from sales comes when we're making it about us. I think it feels more uncomfortable in our bodies when we're making it about us and the money in the bank. And there's just a way to kind of like, I think there's a way we make sales slimy when we're not clear. We're not clear about everything you just shared about what you're selling and the potential impact that clients will receive and who it's for, who it's not for. I think when we can do that work to be really clear about what we're selling to whom and why, it can allow for a much more empowered approach to sales, which it sounds like you've really found.
Yeah, as you're talking, it's helping me articulate this even more in my mind. There's the idea of the, smarmy sales bro guy, and who's just out there to make his numbers. And I don't know that culture very well, but get the trophy, whatever. You go into the drinks with the boys. There is this idea of that person sells to hit their numbers and to maybe for their ego. They don't care about the client really or the product. They're competitive. I have literally found that person 0 times, no time in a therapist or a social worker or probably a empath coach who you're talking about. So really it's the opposite problem. That fantasy dude is out there just selling the widget and filling our earth with garbage. Meanwhile, all the empaths are over here saying, well, I don't want to sell. I don't want to be smarmy, and not pushing any message or really getting out there and evangelizing around what's possible on the other side of that. And so I think it can be a real disservice if empaths feel like I can't sell. I actually want every single therapist I have to feel really good about selling, to step really into what they have to offer, to know really well why their potential client or patient might be afraid to pursue this therapy route, and help them understand the unconscious drivers to status, all of those things. Because if we don't, Elon Musk, I don't know if I'm supposed to real chuckity chuck over here, is going to be pushing this thing that really is making the world worse. And so the more we can get our empaths to sell and feel confident selling, I think there's going to be better outcomes for certainly them and their client, but also in a larger scale. Man, we need some better outcomes.
Absolutely. Totally. I mean, I could not agree more. I believe that when there are more values aligned and heart-centered entrepreneurs thriving, making bank, that will change the world of business, that we can change the way that business is done.
That's right.
So, yes, could not agree with you more.
Yeah. And it's tricky. And it feels so tricky for all of us. I'm sure.
It does. Which actually is where I'd love to take the conversation next. So for your therapist, for your students in your program, how do you help them design and clarify and share their rates?
Yes. First things first, we actually have a fee calculator online that's free. So we have our students do it in the program, but also anyone can just do it out in the world. One of the things that is imperative is to separate our rate from our value. So many therapists talk about what we're worth. Oh, what am I worth? But if we're talking like that, it's very hard to set any kind of fee, especially if we have insecurities or continuing to work through our own trauma. We might feel like I'm worth $1 million on Friday and I'm worth 50 cents on Monday. So both separating it from how we feel about ourselves, also separating it from our fantasies about the needs of our clients, right? Oh, what can they afford? What if, I work with African-American women and maybe they can't afford my rates. I'm Black for listeners who can't view me. Maybe this used to be my own story. Oh no, if I want to charge high fees, I can't work with Black people. I have to work with white people. What? It took me a minute to be like, wait a minute, Tiffany, what are my stories about what people can afford? Wow. So really getting clear on, wait, it's not even about what my person can afford. It's not about what is allowed by my colleagues or my supervisor. It's not what my own therapist is charging. So really first, all the ways that therapists typically charge, looking around and seeing what their peers are charging, thinking what can my client potentially afford, which is just a fantasy and usually based on our own self 10 years ago, struggling to make it, or we know we need a therapist, we needed therapy as a 10-year-old and we didn't get it. What could my family, right? All of our stories about what our rate should be set on, assessing the market. I think that's bull honky, because I've never known a therapist who really goes out and does a deep, thoughtful assessment of the market and with a data analysis spreadsheet. Assessing the market usually means, oh, my therapist charges 110 and my friend next door charges 50. So I guess I'll set it around 75, right? We just make stuff up. So getting rid of all of those things and actually setting our rate based on what are our current expenses in our household? What are our current expenses for our business? And then what are our dream expenses? Like if we let ourselves really live, paying off all our student loans, because you now have $80,000 to $200,000 in student loans from this degree you got if you're a licensed therapist. What about my retirement? Probably many therapists have zero retirement or very little because of what they've done in their life up until that point. So the reality of, wow, if I could truly be taken care of, what would that mean? What if I'm getting a massage every month or every other week? What if I want to play the violin, right? Whatever, in my dream world, what would I look like if I really took care of myself? So we do those hard numbers. Then we also look at what kind of schedule do I need to really show up and do my best work? We have therapists sometimes who are seeing 30 or 40 human beings a week and holding all of their psychic weight. It's absolutely untenable. I can say with certainty that those therapists are not doing good clinical work. There's no time for their own ongoing training, no time for their own clinical consultation, certainly no time for their own therapy. So really, in their ideal world, where you can get up at 9, do some yoga, have some tea, write in your journal, roll into work at 10, see 2 clients, and then, really do some journaling about what came up with your clients, maybe get some books and read some articles, maybe see 2 more clients, be done for the day. Do that 4 days a week, right? Really get clear about the numbers, like how many people do I have to see if I'm really showing up and being present for them? Then we have the calculator that just does the math and spits out, $225. After taxes, your fee needs to be $225 per session. So really getting up all of our feelings, our own work, what we imagine we're worth, what we imagine our clients can afford, getting all of that out of the way and just looking at what we need to fund our own lives and then setting our fee from there. In terms of the conversation, how to have that conversation. If we already have a practice, if a therapist has a practice where everybody's on insurance and maybe they're paying a $20 copay, that's it. And the insurance is reimbursing $70. And that's been the way it's been for 5 years. After the therapists have done the work of the first 2 modules, where we're actually getting into how we're relating to ourselves and others, our unconscious projections, thoughts, feelings around money, around people that have money, around people that don't, right? After we've done all that work, the actual conversation with our clients is very straightforward. I would give people a script, but it doesn't make any sense if people haven't done the internal work, which is the script would be, Hannah, I did want to let you know that as of, X date, my fee will be going up to $225 and I will no longer be taking insurance. Like that freaks therapists the F out. They want to explain, and I'm doing it because XYZ, or, and I have to justify the rate. But the magic of doing this work clinically is that as soon as you say that thing and then shut your mouth, it gives the client the ability to come forward with their own conscious or unconscious response to what money means to them. Abandonment, betrayal, envy, fear, neglect. They got to fill the space with their own story. And our therapists, by at this point, have learned to do the work to say something like, Hannah, it really feels like I'm leaving you just like your parents did. Your parents both left you emotionally, and here I am doing it again with these rates. And then shut your mouth again and let the work now come forward in a beautiful unfold. And then Hannah might also say, F you, you never cared about me. Man, you're really pissed. Here it is. Your parents did that to you, or whoever did. Your boyfriend left you 2 months ago, and now here I am doing the same thing. Everybody's abandoning you. Right? And leave room for the work to unfold. We don't shut down their feelings. We don't explain our fees. We let the work unfold as it needs to, consciously and unconsciously.
That's so, so rich. I just hear so much gold in that feels like full fuel for the soul. But with the last piece that you said, it reminded me of a quote that I actually have on my desk right now, and I want to read it to you. So this was shared by a mentor of mine, a coach mentor of some work that I did. Actually, I'm sure you're familiar with this work. So he's He does internal family systems work for coaches.
Mm.
And so in his own work with his own coach, one of the reflections that he was given from his coach was, the power of my presence as a healer will strengthen to the degree that I can separate from being a caretaker.
Yeah.
Isn't that so good?
Wait, read that again. Read that again for the listeners out there.
The power of my presence as a healer will strengthen to the degree that I can separate from being a caretaker. And
That's beautiful.
It is. And it's so connected with what you just shared, because when we can own our rates and communicate them flatly and transparently, then we make space for people to do their own healing around their own money work without being a caretaker, without getting in their way of doing that deeply needed work.
Yes, I'm getting goosebumps. So I have 2 little kids now. And one of the things I've done a lot of work around is, and one of the values that has been most important to me when raising them, one just turned 4, the other one is going to be 2 in a few months, is stepping back so that they can have all of the emotions in the world. I want them to step into that without me coming to cut them off. And so often therapists, when they act in the role of caregiver, it's because of, I'll use as therapists, it's because of our own discomfort with the other person's emotional experience. So when we think about raising our rate, the thing that often cuts therapists off from doing it is they're going to be mad. They're going to be sad. They're going to think I'm greedy, whatever all those things are. The number one, I'm going to say at the core, my belief about the core trauma for most individuals in the world, but I'll say who seek therapy, is that in their moment of need, their greatest emotional need, their caregiver left them, either actually or emotionally, because the caregiver could not tolerate those feelings in them. So that child learned to say, I'm going to put these feelings aside to protect my caregiver. So that I keep getting goosebumps. So what happens when we go to our therapist who hasn't done their deep work, especially around money is just money, who cares? It's just a real important flashpoint into our deepest feelings. So if they then go into a therapist who says, I'm going to keep my rates low, whether they're saying it out loud, they're saying it, whether they're saying it out loud or not. I'm going to keep my rates at 100, even though they need to be 150, so that I don't have to experience you, clients, your anger, your sadness, your pain, your rage, your disappointment, your hurt. We're repeating the trauma that is at their core wound. And the best gift, the most healing work we can do is to do what we need to do for ourselves. My rate is now 150, and then stay with them with all of the feelings that come. That's the healing work. It's not keeping the feelings away. It's being with them with their anger and not getting mad back. Or even saying, oh, I'm mad that you're mad, but I'm here with you. Like the two of us were in this together, no matter what. You can be mad. You can hate me. You can be disappointed. You can feel like I've betrayed you. I've betrayed you. Not even fight against that thought. Like in their world, we have betrayed them. All right, I'm going to be with you in that world. We have my 3-year-old, we'll say when he was 3, he's now 4. You hit me on purpose. Like maybe I trip and knock him with something. You hit me on purpose. Oh man, you were just minding your own business and I skim over and hit you. Yeah. That's hard, right? Not inserting my own world. Anyway, I get all passionate about this, but really, money gives us an opportunity to take care of our own desires, but not leave our client when they have feelings about our boundaries and our needs. That's a gift. And that is the healing work in my mind of therapy.
Mm-hmm. It's so good, Tiffany. This is like fuel for the soul, truly. Something I often share in coaching with my coaching clients is that, we can say anything inside of relationship. Mm. When we start with relationship, we can reflect anything inside of it.
It makes me think, we're going to go all the way back to your 2023 word. I know this wasn't your word, but what you said in there, if we cannot tolerate feelings in ourselves, then we can't tolerate them in relationship. And so going back to our money work, if I cannot tolerate my own desire, if I cannot tolerate the idea that someone else may be disappointed, and whatever stories I have, I've hurt them, I've betrayed them, I'm greedy. If we can't go into and make space for those feelings in ourselves, we absolutely are unable to be there with our clients when they're having those exact same feelings. So my whole program, Lean and Make Bank, where people are like, it's about money and therapists making more money. Tiffany is selfish. The secret is when everybody gets to the program, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best clinical program I've ever taken. And it was disguised as a money program. But if I said like lean in, get some psychoanalysis, nobody's buying that program. So I got to call it something where people do get clear money results on the other side, but that pales in comparison to the clinical depth that emerges in their work by virtue of doing this money work.
Yeah. And just to connect the dots super clearly, I also hear just how much our willingness and capacity to make bank and charge premium rates is connected with our willingness to do that deep unconscious healing and work.
That's absolutely right. What someone, I don't care what a therapist charges, they can charge 50 cents. I might have some problems with that, but we won't get into it. As long as the reason they're charging that 50 cents is not because they're afraid to charge 250. I want every therapist to know how and be able to easily and in a clinically appropriate way charge whatever they need and not avoid it out of fear. Once you can do that, the world is your oyster, but you have to know how to do that in order to do anything clinically important.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, I'm mindful of the time, and this has been such a rich conversation. We will link to all of your links and your website in the show notes, but I'd love to give you a moment to just point people to perhaps the place where you'd like them to start getting to know you and getting to experience your amazing work in the world.
Sure. I would, since this is a podcast, I'll say go listen to our podcast, The Money Sessions. I haven't recorded in maybe a year or two, but there are like 80 episodes on there with this kind of conversation constantly. So go check that out.
Awesome. We'll link to those too as well. And the last question as we wrap up today, what has supported you in becoming a prosperous empath? What's made the biggest difference?
I go to a psychoanalyst 2 times a week, 4 years, doing this deep unconscious work with another human at premium rates. She charges now $325 per session. I think our relationship to our business is our relationship to everything. And by virtue of going and understanding the ways I'm relating to business, and really how that's about my mom and my dad and deep, deep, deep generations of trauma, really frees me up to make conscious choices in my business and with my clients.
That sounds like a steal for that much value.
Absolutely. It is.
Tiffany, thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation. I've taken so much for myself. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you. And likewise.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.